I never imagined a single question could shatter the quiet rhythm of my life. That morning, the sunlight poured gently through my kitchen window, filling the room with warmth. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the faint scent of lavender from the little sachet I kept by the sink. I was sipping my cup, enjoying the rare calm of a Saturday morning, when Max and Lena called me. They wanted to visit. Again, I hesitated, recalling the last few weeks a blur of tension, small arguments, and awkward visits that always ended with financial requests. But I had learned to guard my calm. I smiled politely, told them I would be home, and waited. The sound of their car pulling up felt ordinary at first. I had invited them in countless times before, in a house that had always been meant to welcome them. When Lena opened the door, her smile was sharper than usual, her eyes too bright. Max hung back, restless, avoiding eye contact. "Hi, Mom," Max said quietly, almost as if he were reciting lines from a script. Lena stepped forward, holding a small, slightly crumpled envelope. I offered my usual warmth, unaware that this visit would change everything. I asked about their week, about work, about the garden. Lena answered in that rehearsed, cheerful way that never quite reached her eyes. Then, with a casual air that made my stomach drop, she said, "We got married yesterday." For a moment, the words hung in the air, heavy and impossible to believe. I felt the coffee cup tremble in my hand. "What do you mean, yesterday?" I asked, my voice steady but incredulous. "Just like I said," Lena replied, smiling politely. "We got married yesterday." I blinked, hoping she would repeat herself or offer some explanation. But she didn't. It was like a bomb had exploded in the center of my carefully organized life. The quiet dignity I had maintained for years was suddenly under siege. My heart pounded, a slow, insistent drum in my chest. I tried to process the betrayal. Max, my son, stood silently, nodding, as if confirming that Lena had spoken the truth. They had made the decision without telling me, not even a hint, not a whisper. My life had always revolved around family milestones, celebrations, and shared joys. And now, I was the last to know that my son's marriage had already happened. For hours after that, I sat in my living room, staring at the walls that had once felt comforting. I smelled the faint vanilla from the candle on the mantel, but it brought no comfort now. I thought of the countless ways I had tried to support them, to nurture them, to be the mother I had always believed I was. And I realized that my support had been taken for granted. The next days were a haze of quiet suspicion. I noticed subtle changes, small whispers between Max and Lena when they thought I wasn't looking, hushed phone calls that ended when I entered the room. I started keeping a journal, documenting every interaction, every demand, every curious glance. It became a habit. The pen in my hand was a small shield, a way to protect myself from the emotional whiplash I was experiencing. One afternoon, I decided to confront Max. We sat in the sunlit kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound. "Max," I said, choosing my words with care, "why didn't you tell me about the wedding?" He looked down, fidgeting with his hands. "Mom, we didn't think it mattered. We wanted it to be simple, private." I swallowed the lump in my throat, fighting the rising tide of anger. "Private?" I echoed. "Your mother, your family, our home has always been part of your life. And yet, you chose to exclude me entirely. That's not privacy, Max. That's betrayal." Lena entered then, her smile carefully neutral, as if she had rehearsed this confrontation 1,000 times. "We didn't mean to hurt you," she said softly, almost sweetly. "We just wanted our moment without interference." But the calmness in their voices did nothing to soothe the storm in my heart. I realized then that this was no longer just about a missed invitation or a private ceremony. This was about a fundamental disregard for my feelings, for my place in their lives. I felt a strange mix of grief, anger, and disbelief. I had spent decades nurturing and supporting them, and in return, they had treated me as invisible. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house, usually my sanctuary, felt suffocating. I could still hear the soft ticking of the clock in the hallway, marking the passage of time I could not reclaim. I thought about my own life, my own needs, my own rights as an adult woman with a history, a legacy, and dignity. I realized that no one, not even my own children, could dictate my sense of worth. In the days that followed, the tension escalated. Max and Lena began asking for money in subtle ways, offhand comments about bills, casual mentions of purchases they needed covered. Each request was wrapped in the same rehearsed charm that now felt poisonous. I began refusing, calmly but firmly, documenting everything. It was a strange kind of empowerment to finally set boundaries, but it also brought a deep, gnawing anxiety. They were my family, after all. Would they retaliate? And then, one afternoon, the first serious clue appeared. I received a notice from a lawyer I didn't know, claiming they represented Max and Lena. My hands shook as I read the letter. They were demanding control over my finances, citing my erratic behavior and my refusal to cooperate with them as evidence of mental incompetence. I read the words over and over, the smell of the ink somehow sharp in my nose, the paper trembling in my fingers. Betrayal had a new face now, legal manipulation. My children, the ones I had raised, were attempting to strip me of my independence. The weight of it pressed down on my chest, but somewhere beneath the panic, a quiet determination began to grow. I realized that I could either crumble under the assault or fight, and I would fight not just for my money, but for my dignity, my autonomy, my life. I called Mr. Weber, a lawyer I had worked with for years, explaining the situation. His voice was calm but firm. "Renata, this is serious, but we have a solid foundation. You are fully competent, and the law is on your side. We will document everything, from their financial manipulations to the psychological pressures they've exerted. We will protect you." That night, I sat in my garden, the faint scent of jasmine drifting in the cool air. The stars shone above, indifferent to human betrayal and greed. And yet, I felt a flicker of hope. I wasn't alone. I had evidence, allies, and a will to reclaim my life. The battle would be long, but for the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to feel that I could survive it. The days that followed were tense, filled with quiet observation and careful planning. I kept meticulous notes of every interaction, every message, every moment that felt suspicious. Max and Lena's smiles now seemed sharpened, like masks hiding a hunger I had never imagined in my own children. My home, once a haven, had become a fortress of vigilance. I installed cameras at discreet angles, not to spy, but to protect. Each click of the recording device felt like a small act of reclaiming power, a reassurance that I could defend myself if necessary. One afternoon, while reviewing footage from the previous week, I saw Max and Lena drive slowly past my house multiple times. Sometimes they lingered, sometimes they parked, pretending to adjust something in the car. It was deliberate, calculated. My stomach churned with unease, but I forced myself to remain calm. Every act they took against me now became part of the evidence, part of the shield I was building around myself. Then came the discovery that cut deeper than any legal letter, deeper than any threat. I had been asked to attend a casual lunch with Eleanor, my friend who had become my anchor through the storm. As we sipped tea in her sunlit kitchen, she mentioned that she had overheard Lena bragging at a friend's gathering. They had not only excluded me from the wedding, but they had also signed a power of attorney for Max without informing me, thinking it would make future financial manipulation easier. My hands trembled around the teacup. The porcelain felt cold, like reality itself. They did what? I asked, my voice tight. Eleanor's eyes softened but held a stern honesty. They assumed they could bypass you. They counted on you not noticing. Renata, that's what these people do. They take advantage of trust and love to secure their gain. I stared at my reflection in the window, the garden bathed in golden afternoon light, and realized I had been living in a house filled with illusions. The warmth, the laughter, the shared memories, they had all been filtered through a lens of expectation. I had expected love, respect, gratitude. Instead, I had received manipulation, entitlement, and secrecy. That night, sleep did not come easily. I could hear the faint rustle of the leaves outside, a soft whispering against the window. I imagined Max and Lena scheming, plotting their next move, unaware that I had begun to anticipate every step. The house smelled faintly of lavender again, but now it was tinged with the anxiety of impending confrontation. I lay awake, thinking about my life, the decades of nurturing, the countless times I had given without thought of return. And I realized something crucial. The love I had invested in them had never been reciprocated. It had been conditional, transactional, an expectation disguised as filial duty. The following morning, I prepared myself for the action that had become inevitable. Mr. Weber arrived promptly, carrying files and documents that had taken weeks to compile. The air between us was calm but charged with purpose. "Renata," he said quietly, "we have everything we need. Your documentation, your witness statements, the evidence of harassment, it all paints a clear picture. They have motives, but we have facts, I nodded, feeling a strange mixture of fear and resolve. Fear of what could happen if they succeeded, but also resolve born from the knowledge that I had fought for my life, my dignity, my freedom. The first step was a formal complaint, detailing the unauthorized attempts to influence my financial decisions and the deception surrounding the secret marriage and power of attorney. Every word was factual, every statement supported by evidence. Max and Lena's reactions came swiftly. At first, subtle threats and phone calls, veiled comments meant to intimidate. Then came the letters from lawyers, the kind that tried to frame me as irrational, paranoid, even mentally declining. Their arguments were insidious, crafted to make my independence look like instability. I read each letter carefully, annotating, cataloging, preparing. And through it all, I reminded myself, truth has weight, evidence has power. My life, my decisions, my mind, they were mine. Weeks passed like this, a tense rhythm of vigilance and preparation. My friends Eleanor, Cynthia, Maria, Carmen, and Alfreda became my counsel in ways beyond the legal. Their support, their reassurance, their quiet presence reminded me that I was not alone. They shared their own experiences of betrayal and manipulation, validating my fears and strengthening my resolve. In their eyes, I saw the reflection of my own courage, a woman who refused to be diminished by greed. Then came the most surreal moment, the visit from the social investigator. I remember her knock at the door, crisp and official, carrying a weight I hadn't anticipated. Mrs. Schmidt, she called herself, introduced as a representative from the Office of Senior Services. The words tumbled over my senses, reports of erratic behavior, paranoia, refusal of family guidance. I felt the old anxiety rising, a shadow of fear I hadn't yet shed. But I stood my ground, calling Mr. Weber before answering a single question. When he arrived, calm and precise, the situation shifted instantly. The investigator's questions, meant to undermine my autonomy, were met with measured evidence and clear testimony. My independence, my competence, my mental clarity, all laid out in careful, undeniable documentation. Watching her leave, her demeanor subtly changed. I felt a profound sense of validation. I was not paranoid. I was not erratic. I was simply defending my life from those who sought to exploit it. It was during this period that I began to notice small but significant patterns in Max and Lena's behavior. The sudden appearance of new lawyers, the whispers of concerned friends, the attempts to manipulate even strangers into questioning my judgment, they were escalating. They were desperate, and in that desperation, they revealed their true selves. Their actions were no longer merely familial disputes. They were calculated attempts to claim what they felt entitled to, without regard for morality, truth, or love. Through it all, I learned the quiet strength of patience and preparation. I discovered that dignity is not only an internal state but a shield against those who would strip it away. I learned that evidence, clarity, and calm resolve could disarm even the most cunning manipulations. I began to see the slow unfolding of justice, not as a moment of instant vindication, but as a process, meticulous and deliberate, in which truth could ultimately prevail. And then, the moment came that crystallized everything I had fought for. A well-dressed young woman from the court, official and polite, arrived at my door with more letters, more claims, more questions. But I was ready. I asked for identification, confirmed her credentials, and then, with Mr. Weber present, allowed the conversation to proceed. Every assertion she made, every suggestion that I was incapable, was met with calm, evidence-backed responses. The illusion of my supposed instability shattered quietly, without spectacle, leaving only the unassailable truth. I was fully competent, fully aware, fully myself. By the time the investigator left, I understood something profound. Max and Lena could employ lawyers, bribe witnesses, manipulate appearances, but they could not alter the truth. They could not rewrite the years of my life, the careful documentation, the steady evidence of my independence. And in that moment, I began to feel the first stirrings of something I had almost forgotten: hope. The day of the court hearing arrived faster than I had expected. I woke early, my heart a mixture of dread and determination. As sunlight spilled through the curtains, I took a deep breath and reminded myself I had prepared, documented, and surrounded myself with support. Today was not just about defending my finances, it was about defending my life, my dignity, and my autonomy. Mr. Weber arrived at my house promptly, briefcase in hand, papers meticulously organized. "Renata," he said softly, Today we show them exactly what kind of person you are. Calm, rational, competent. I nodded, feeling a strange serenity settle over me. After weeks of fear, anticipation, and scrutiny, it felt almost liberating to move forward. At the courthouse, the air was thick with formality and quiet murmurs. I could see Max and Lena across the room, sitting stiffly, their faces pale under the harsh courtroom lights. There was no warmth in their eyes, only the cold calculation of two people convinced they could bend the world to their will. Their lawyer, confident and polished, gave subtle nods as if to assure them that their performance would be enough. The opening statements began. Max and Lena's lawyer was careful, eloquent, and practiced. "Your Honor," he began, his voice calm but insidious. "Mrs. Renata Richter has shown a marked decline in judgment and rationality. She has severed ties with her family, isolated herself, and taken actions that suggest a deterioration in mental capacity. We petition the court to appoint a legal guardian for her, to ensure her continued well-being and proper management of her finances." Every word was calculated, meant to make my independence seem like instability, my protection of myself seem paranoia. I felt a tight knot in my stomach but reminded myself of the facts, the evidence, and the witnesses who could speak to the truth. I looked at Mr. Weber. His calm, confident gaze was a silent anchor. Then, the first witnesses were called. Lena went first. She performed with a precision that was almost cinematic, tears welling at the right moment, a trembling voice, expressions of concern for my mental health. "Your Honor," she said, "Renata has changed. She is not the mother we knew. She has isolated herself, refuses to communicate, and shows signs of irrational behavior." I could see the subtle cracks in her story as Mr. Weber began cross-examining. "Mrs. Schuster," he began, "can you recall the last time you called your mother without asking for money?" Lena hesitated, faltering. Her well-practiced performance began to wobble. She stumbled over dates and events, contradicting herself in small but crucial ways. Max was next. Seeing him swear to tell the truth while preparing to lie about my mental state was almost unbearable. The boy I had raised, my own son, now standing in front of a judge, attempting to frame his mother as incompetent. "My mom has always been generous," he testified, "but lately, she's erratic. We just want to help her." Mr. Weber's questions were precise, deliberate. "Max, how much money have you received from your mother in the last 3 years?" Max faltered. I don't know the exact amount," he stammered. "Would $33,400 be accurate?" The silence that followed was deafening. Max's eyes flickered with the realization that his lies were unraveling. Then came the most surreal moment, confronting the statements of supposed witnesses like Mr. Davis and Mr. Green. Mr. Green, my pharmacist, admitted under oath that he had been misled by Lena, convinced to sign a statement that twisted the truth about my medication habits. Mr. Davis, my neighbor, had observed only superficial behaviors, my cameras, my friends' visits, my cautious vigilance, but had interpreted them as signs of instability. Every revelation felt like a small victory, a chink in the armor that Max and Lena had built around their narrative. I watched the judge flipping through pages, occasionally glancing up at the courtroom, absorbing every testimony, every piece of evidence. There was no rush. No dramatics, just the deliberate weighing of truth against manipulation. Then it was time for Dr. Moore's testimony. Calm, professional, yet warm, she spoke about my cognitive evaluation, describing the tests, the questions, the flawless results that proved my mental competence. Mrs. Richter's reasoning, memory, and financial understanding are not only intact, but well above average for her age, she said. The courtroom absorbed every word, the weight of professional validation filling the space like a quiet crescendo. One by one, my allies spoke. Eleanor, my steadfast friend, described the support, the clarity, the vitality she had witnessed firsthand. Cynthia, Maria, Carmen, and Alfreda spoke about the transformation they had seen in me, the renewal, the independence, the courage. Each testimony was a thread weaving a tapestry of truth that no manipulation could unravel. Finally, the moment came for me to speak. I stood, feeling the eyes of the courtroom settle on me. I took a deep breath, feeling the air move slowly in my chest, the polished wood of the courtroom cool beneath my fingertips. Every memory of fear, of betrayal, of manipulation surged briefly, and then receded as a calm resolve took its place. "Your Honor," I began, my voice steady, measured, carrying the weight of every hour, every choice, every act of courage. I am 71 years old. I live independently. I manage my finances. I care for my home. I maintain relationships with friends and neighbors. At no point have I acted irrationally or recklessly with my money. I let the words sink in, scanning the room briefly before continuing. I have supported my children when necessary, but I am not a bank. I am a human being with my own life, my own dreams, and my own dignity. I have endured harassment, manipulation, and deceit. I have provided evidence of these acts and have shown that my decisions are rational, measured, and legally sound. This is not a matter of incompetence, it is a matter of my right to live my life free from exploitation. The silence in the courtroom was profound. Even Max and Lena looked momentarily unsettled. Mr. Weber summarized our case concisely, highlighting the evidence, the witnesses, and the motive. Every attempt by their lawyer to intervene was met with the judge's calm but firm gaze, a reminder that truth and justice were not to be swayed by theatrics or manipulation. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the judge spoke. Having reviewed the evidence, including first-hand accounts and expert testimony, I find no indication that Mrs. Richter is incompetent in any way. The petition for guardianship is hereby denied. The words washed over me in a tide of relief and triumph. My hands, which had been clenched tightly for hours, relaxed. Tears formed in my eyes, not of sadness, but of vindication, of the quiet jubilation that comes from surviving betrayal and asserting one's autonomy. Eleanor hugged me outside the courtroom. "You did it," she whispered, her voice steady and warm. "You protected yourself. You reclaimed your life." And in that embrace I realized the profound truth I had learned over these long weeks. The love I had sought from Max and Lena had never been real. But the love I had cultivated for myself through courage, friendship, and respect was unbreakable. After the courtroom, the world seemed quieter, yet somehow fuller. Walking out into the sunlight, I felt a strange lightness. The weight of fear, manipulation, and uncertainty had lifted. For the first time in decades, I could breathe without the tight knot of dread pressing on my chest. The war had been brutal, but victory had a taste sweeter than I could have imagined. Eleanor insisted on taking me to lunch. We found a small cafe, tucked between rows of shops that smelled faintly of fresh bread and coffee. I watched the steam rise from my cup, curling lazily into the air, and felt an unfamiliar warmth in my chest, not just from the coffee, but from the comfort of companionship, of shared triumph. Eleanor smiled at me knowingly. "Renata, today you proved something important not just to them, but to yourself. You are not defined by the greed or cruelty of others. You are your own person, strong, wise, and capable." I nodded, feeling tears prick at the corners of my eyes. The loss of what I had once believed to be my family still stung, but it no longer had power over me. Max and Lena had revealed their true selves. Their love, if it had ever existed, was conditional, transactional, and hollow. In contrast, the relationships I had nurtured with Eleanor and my friends were authentic, built on respect, shared experience, and genuine care. In the following days, I began to reclaim the parts of myself I had long neglected. I returned to my painting, spreading colors across the canvas as if each stroke was a small declaration of freedom. I reorganized my home, not because I had to, but because I wanted to surround myself with comfort, beauty, and order. I even began planning small trips, imagining the places I could visit now that my finances were truly my own. The sense of autonomy was intoxicating. One evening, as I sat in my garden watching the stars begin to pierce the darkening sky, I thought about the loneliness I had feared. But this loneliness was different. It was quiet, reflective, and rich with possibility. I was alone, yes, but not abandoned. I was in the company of my own strength, my choices, and the love I had for myself. I realized then that freedom and self-respect were more valuable than any money or even the illusion of familial love. Eleanor visited often, bringing friends from our garden club, each of them a reminder that community could be chosen, nurtured, and trusted. Maria, Carmen, Cynthia, and Alfreda became my chosen family, and with them, I laughed, shared stories, and healed in ways I had forgotten were possible. Each evening spent with them felt like a balm to the wounds that Max and Lena's betrayal had inflicted. The legal threat, although defeated, served as a lesson. It reminded me that vigilance, courage, and documentation were essential tools in defending oneself, not out of paranoia, but out of prudence. I continued to organize my finances meticulously, keeping detailed records, not as a burden, but as a safeguard of the life I had fought to protect. Slowly, I began to notice the little joys I had ignored for years. The smell of fresh rain on the garden soil, the warmth of the sun on my hands, the quiet satisfaction of a well-cooked meal, and the laughter of friends gathered around my table. These moments, simple yet profound, became the foundation of my new life. And yet, I carried no bitterness. The betrayal had been real, and it had been painful, but I refused to let it harden me. Instead, it became a mirror, reflecting not only the flaws in others, but the resilience within myself. Max and Lena had chosen their path, and I had chosen mine, a path defined by independence, self-respect, and dignity. Weeks passed, and the world settled into a new rhythm. I felt lighter, more present, and more attuned to the beauty around me. The fear of being manipulated or controlled had been replaced by a quiet confidence. I had survived, and I had thrived. My home was no longer a battlefield, but a sanctuary. My life was no longer dictated by the expectations or demands of others, but guided by my own values and desires. On a quiet Sunday morning, I walked through my garden, brushing my fingers along the petals of blooming flowers. I breathed deeply, letting the fragrance fill my lungs. I thought about the long journey, the fear, the confrontation, the courtroom drama, the victories small and large, and I felt gratitude. Gratitude for the clarity I had gained, for the friends who had supported me, and for the inner strength I had discovered. I realized that the love I had always sought from Max and Lena had never been real. But the love I now had for myself, for life, and for those I chose to surround myself with was steadfast and enduring. I had learned that true respect cannot be demanded, only given freely and reciprocated with honesty and care. That night, as I closed the shutters and settled into bed, I felt a profound peace. For the first time in years, I could sleep without the shadow of anxiety or betrayal looming over me. I had faced the storm, endured the betrayal, and emerged not only intact, but stronger. I was not a victim. I was a survivor, a woman who had reclaimed her life from greed, manipulation, and fear. In the days that followed, I continued to build the life I had always wanted. Small joys, meaningful connections, and a renewed sense of purpose became the fabric of my existence. I traveled, explored, and invested in myself not merely financially, but emotionally and spiritually. I discovered that independence was not just about money or autonomy, it was about self-respect, dignity, and the courage to live authentically. And in this newfound freedom, I understood something essential. Life does not guarantee love from everyone, nor does it promise understanding from family. But it does offer the chance to love yourself, to protect your own boundaries, and to cultivate relationships that nourish, support, and honor who you are. That truth, more than anything, became my guiding principle. The war had been long, painful, and exhausting, but victory was sweeter than I could have ever imagined. I smiled at the world ahead, knowing that nothing, not greed, not betrayal, not fear could ever take away my dignity, my independence, or my freedom again. As I sit here now, in the quiet of my home, I often think about what it truly means to be free. Freedom is not simply the absence of fear or obligation, it is the presence of self-respect, the courage to make choices that honor who you are, and the wisdom to walk away from those who would diminish your worth. I have learned that love cannot be bought, coerced, or manipulated. True love is patient, steady, and unconditional, but even when it is absent, we can create it within ourselves. I wonder how many of us stay trapped in relationships, in family dynamics, or even in routines that drain our spirit, believing that obligation is the same as love. I once believed that too. I thought that by giving everything, I would be loved in return. But the truth is, love cannot be purchased or forced, and respect cannot be demanded, it must be earned. And sometimes it can only be found outside of the people we thought would give it to us. If there is one lesson I hope my story leaves with you, it is this: your value is not defined by the greed, jealousy, or manipulation of others. Your worth is inherent. Your dignity is sacred. And no matter what challenges you face, even betrayal by those you love most, you have the power to reclaim your life, to protect your peace, and to build the future you deserve. I want you to ask yourself, are you living for yourself or for the approval of others? Are you protecting your heart, your mind, and your independence, or are you allowing others to dictate your worth? Sometimes the hardest battles are not against strangers or institutions, they are against the expectations, fears, and illusions we carry about those closest to us. But when we face them with courage, clarity, and conviction, we discover a freedom that is unshakable. I will always carry a part of sadness for what could have been with Max and Lena, but I will carry even more pride for what I have built for myself. A life filled with authentic love, meaningful connections, and the unbreakable knowledge that I am enough. And if you are listening to my story, know that you too are enough. You too can protect your heart and your life from those who would diminish it. You too can rise from betrayal, walk through fear, and claim your own freedom. So I ask you, as you reflect on this story tonight, who in your life truly honors you? Who respects your boundaries, your choices, and your dignity? And perhaps most importantly, are you willing to stand for yourself, even when it means walking away from those you thought would always be there? Because at the end of the day, the greatest love, the deepest respect, and the most enduring peace can only begin within you. And once you find it, there, no force in the world, no greed, no betrayal, no fear can ever take it from you.